Okay, are we ready for me?
Yes, go ahead, proceed.
Okay, all right. So we're at the point of the second reading of the changes to policy BDA. At the last meeting, we presented two options. The board voted to have its meetings on the fourth Thursday of each month. And so the policy will be revised to make that change, and that's the only revision to BDA. So if there aren't any questions for me, then it's right for you all to entertain a motion on. But I'm certainly available to answer any questions.
Second.
Okay, so been properly moved and seconded that we. Ooh,
Can y'all hear me?
Yep, we can hear you, so it's
Okay.
okay.
That we accept the policy as stated.
Yeah, I got it. I got it.
She got it.
Okay. Seeing no discussion, let's go to the vote.
Director Coleman,
The vote. You're voting.
Director Graves, Director McGee,
Aye.
Director Townsend,
Aye.
Director Carter,
Aye.
Director Watry, Director Kendrick.
Motion passed 5-0. Okay, then we go into discussion items, ideals, and current reality. That's us. That's yeah.
Well, thank you all for having us here today. We have about an hour.
Turn the camera around on that.
It's on.
Oh,
Do you guys want to turn the computer around? Am I okay to start?
no, it's okay. We got you.
Okay, great. So I'm Coquithia Hill. A little bit about me. I'm currently the CEO of Black KC, Black stands for Black Leaders Advancing Quality Urban Education. Right before that, I was Director of Leadership and Development at KU on the research side of the house. I'm currently chair of the Urban League of Greater Kansas City, vice chair of the Planning Commission, was a former council member, former school board member, KC Public Schools. And some of these companies on the bottom are just places that I work. I'm native of Kansas City, born and bred, graduated from Lincoln Prep. So Kansas City is my hometown. I'll turn it over to my high school rival.
How's everyone doing? Happy to be here. My name is Murray Woodard. I serve as the engagement manager at the Kaufman Foundation on our public affairs team, but for education. So my focus areas are education, civic. I serve on the board of trustees of the Kansas City Art Institute, as well as the advisory board for South by Southwest EDU. Currently serve on the steering committee for Centurions, and was the 2020 ACE Award recipient for diversity work here in Kansas City. So the organizations that he enlisted at the bottom, all the organizations that are near and dear to my heart. One pays my salary, the other two, I personally spend a lot of time ensuring that they continue to be successful. So happy to be here, a proud graduate of Southeast High School, Kansas City Public School, Southeast Nights in the building. So thank you for having us. And just a little bit, just want to take a second to ground our time together. This is just sort of to set the stage for the next couple of days. We'll build on this tomorrow when we talk about some of the norms, but these are things that we just like to live by anytime we're working with groups. One is equity of voice. We understand that in a lot of rooms, there are usually folk that like to carry the conversation, and that's okay. They bring a lot to the table, but we want to make sure that everyone has a chance to sort of share. So if you feel yourself taking up a lot of space, or if you feel yourself not entering the room at all, just let's all be paying close attention to that. Active participation, we ask everybody lean in. We just ask people all the time, lean into this comfort, lean into comfort, but everyone has to actively participate in order for us to get the best out of this. Assume positive intent. We're not here to stay away from tough issues. In fact, we'll talk a little bit about this elephant sign and even this parking lot sign. We don't shy away from tough conversations, but in order for us to move the ball forward, we all have to assume positive intent. And then lastly, probably the most important thing up here is keep kids at the center. We keep the kids at the center of everything we do, which is how even when Koki and I don't agree on how to move forward, we understand that kids are the priority and that's the focus for us. So can we all agree to do these 4 things for the next couple of days? Yes. All right. Just want to do a quick round of introductions. I know you all know each other, but it's just an opportunity for us to get to know each other a little better. But we want to do it quick. And so I'll put 1 minute up here because sometimes this gets out of hand. So I'm just asking your name, your current role, which it is from this board member. What's one thing you'd like to accomplish during this retreat? And then lastly, I've been doing these and saying, what's your summer song? But I think for this group, it's like, what keeps you going? What song? It doesn't matter if it's gospel, doesn't matter if it's old school, doesn't matter if it's something that came out yesterday. But what's one song that keeps you motivated?
It's actually a real song.
No, whatever. Hopefully it's something I can search. I love to put together Hickman School Board playlist if I could. But if not, I'm sure you'll sing it for us. I'll record it. And so we'll start on this side of the room. We'll just go around.
Where's McGee? He's hiding out.
Yeah,
Yeah, he got out just in time.
Okay.
Wait, Giddy.
All right, I'm Byron Townsend, school board member. Things that I would like to accomplish in this retreat that everyone is humanized.
Nice.
I saw you roll up today. I saw you roll up in your black car. You had music. So I know you listen to music.
But, you know, there's a song that I sing a lot just to keep me motivated. And I don't even know if it's a real song. I It's a beautiful morning. It's a beautiful morning. And it's right, you know.
I like it.
April, you're up.
My name is April Waterman. I'm board secretary, executive assistant superintendent. Song that motivates me is Hannah Man, Take Me to the King.
My name is Yao Obeng, and I am the superintendent of, I should say, proud superintendent of Hickman Middle School District. One thing that I'd like to accomplish during this retreat is team cohesion. And songs, geez, songs are hard, but I think I got about 2 songs.
He was ready. That's what we're talking.
So one song that I think for the district is Ain't No Stopping Us Now. Moving on. But then another song that personally, it would be Lovely Day by Bill Withers, right? That song. Lovely Day.
My name is Cecil Watry. I'm a board director. One thing I'd like to accomplish before this retreat is gaining consensus of confidence of board governance. That's a lot. Yeah, that's the thing. And song would be Umi Says by Yasin Bey.
You need who?
Most of Umi Says. No problem.
Hi, I'm Ann Coleman. I'm board director. And one thing I'd like to accomplish during this retreat is that we can all come together and agree to disagree.
That's good. Agree too.
And my song is Moving On Up.
Hey. Jefferson.
And I'm Carol Graves, and I am a board director. And one of the things I would like to see accomplished at this retreat, I would like to see our board respect each other, come away, you go on retreats, you come in one way, you go out another. And that's one thing I want to see, because we have a lot of work to do. And we don't do that. So we're working together and on the same page. We don't always agree. The vote doesn't always come out like we wanted, but just to have a mutual respect for one another. That's what I've been on the board for a long time. I really want to see that. That's something that I want to see. And my favorite song is Celebrate by Cool and the Gang. Every time you hear that song, you slap and say something. That's my song. Celebrate. Good time. Come on.
Celebration.
Celebration. Celebrate.
My name is Brian D. I'm vice president of the school board. And one thing I'd like to accomplish during this retreat is getting to know board members better and understanding of folks' perspective. And so for me, I think, we are in a situation where we basically see each other once a month for 2.5 hours, sometimes 3, and that's it. And so hopefully during this weekend, we get to know each other better.
You say only 2.5 hours? You say only 2.5 hours?
I was it 2.5 hours, give or take.
Multiply that by
Sometimes.
2.
What's the song? I think I go with James Brown. I feel good.
Oh, Miss Carter, yeah. Miss Carter, you there? Do you want to introduce yourself?
She's gone.
I think she's gone.
She had to leave at 6, so she's gone.
Yeah, we should have probably started with her.
Then we have another one that's coming.
Yeah, Irene's coming over tonight. She should be here for dinner, I don't know. She just said she's coming here tonight.
She coming for dinner?
Is she coming here for dinner?
Yeah, she should be, I think.
We'll just add a slide for us.
And we'll be sure to find out her accomplishments as well as her song. Briefly go over the agenda for today, which we only have about a little over an hour left. So, welcoming, grounding, we just did our opening activity as well. We're gonna spend some time talking about the thought exchange, and I want to thank you all in advance for completing that. But we'll take a quick dive into that. Naming our why. I think this is gonna be important. I think it gets to a lot of how we accomplish some of those things we have on the board. I think oftentimes we don't realize we're all working for the same thing. Might have different ways of getting there, but I think it's important for us to name those. Talk a little bit about our current reality as well. And you want to talk about the parking lot in Delaware?
Yeah, sure. I always say that elephants are so great. I mean, when you think about, I'm just messing with her, she's like, I'm just but no, that's this idea of like, we understand that there are the goals and accomplishments, but sometimes to move through things, you have an elephant in the room. And we can all talk around the elephant, we can act like we don't see the elephant, but we need to name the elephant even if we don't have an opportunity to deep dive today. Because these are things that can get in the way or create unnecessary barriers just because we're moving around it. So you'll have some sticky notes as we go through. If there's an elephant that you're like, yeah, we're talking around this, but we're not getting deep down, you can name it. You have your opportunity every year. We can stick it here. We'll make sure that we close out saying, hey, here's some things that we need to make sure that we address. And then there's the parking lot. We have a limited time here, right? And so if we continue to chase and try to unpack each and everybody's elephant, we won't get to your accomplishment and goals that you have. But out of respect for understanding that this work is organic, it's continuous, it's living, and so is the board, that we want to provide spaces. So you can put it up on the parking lot, you can put your elephants up, and we will actually find time where we unpack, we will vote by consensus, hey, what's up here that we need to unpack? And then the parking lot are things that you all as a board can continue to work towards with the help of whoever, right? But it's just providing a space for it. And then the thought exchange. I hope you guys enjoyed the thought exchange. Because we believe in equity in the voice, sometimes there are conditions that exist in the space in which people don't feel safe enough to share ideas or wonder what people might believe about them if they share an idea. So thought exchange is an opportunity not only for people to add their voice and be anonymous, but it also gives an opportunity for everybody that's participating to rate that. So you have an opportunity to give stars to other people's thoughts. And what that allows us to do is to see what are some of those things that you guys agree upon, that have alignment, and what are some things that are in this space that you might want to consider, hey, we need to address this. So the question that you all had for your first exchange was, as you plan for the year ahead, what are the opportunities and or challenges you feel need to be addressed? And something about thought exchanges, what I want to say is it's actually a really great tool using community engagement. It gives people, you can access it, it's a QR code, you can access it from your phone. It's very easy to use it in the district meetings. All it does is provide an authentic opportunity for people to give you their honest feedback that they might not say them. So, and it has a platform that will give you some data that you can use. So we had 19 participants, there were 34,000, there were 202 ratings, which means you guys actually went in and rated other people's thoughts. We had 8 board members and 10 members of ELT, which is really, really great.
Administrators.
Well, somebody else, maybe.
No, it's administrators,
Yes.
ELT and administrators.
Yeah, ELT
Yeah, but
administrators.
we can't have 8 board. That's what you're saying, we can't have.
Yes.
7 board members.
Do you think Carla weighed in?
I don't know.
I don't know if
Maybe.
you sent it to her, then maybe she said her role as a board. We can't figure out.
You guys didn't know we had another board member, by the way.
That's somebody might say, I'm about to be on the board.
Or maybe somebody went in twice, could that happen? Someone goes in twice on a different email or something, maybe, I don't know.
Under a different email, probably, not under the same one, because it even lets us know if someone is still working.
Okay.
It won't tell us who, but this is proof that it's anonymous, and we have no idea who your extra board member is. So if you have one, you don't know.
Wow,
So.
okay.
Well, that might sometimes have a disadvantage.
But quorum is still 4, even with 8, right?
That was not me. I did not do the survey.
Oh, Carla just outed herself. She did not do the survey, so.
Okay. All right, we'll see. Word cloud. So you guys know what word cloud is. It has this artificial intelligence that will just pull out, rank the number of times the word was used. But I thought what was really key is that there's like accreditation is in there, that's big. So the more time the word is used, the bigger the font is for those who are not sure about word cloud. But parent, engagement, time, mood, wanting to do, focus, functioning. But what also stood out to us is that policies, communication, and governance were not things that came up repeatedly throughout. So just something for us to know. However, when we look at the key thoughts, so as you rank those, the system will automatically generate what are the top thoughts. It's not me or Murray or whoever. It's the system will highlight it, and we can send it to you guys, and it'll tell you what what's the average stars it received, and what it was ranked. So out of the 21 thoughts, this one was ranked as number 1. Focus on board business, not on personal agenda. And as you know, when you go in thought exchange, it will tell you, hey, what's your thought? And then it's like, what's the rationale? So the bold is the thought. The rationale was, hey, every minute spent on other things is not time spent on the business of the board. The second, which ranked 2 out of 21, is I want us to move the district of Imagine forward and regain our accreditation. That was something that was highly ranked. So when you all went through and everybody went through the ranking, they gave it 4.3 or 4 stars. And then understanding the role of the board. A lot of time is spent on things we can't control or have the authority to change. Those were the top 3 thoughts. Any comments, questions before I move on to the next one? Those sound weird? Does it sound like, who took this? Or does this sound more reflective?
Yeah, I don't have a question, but my comment is your last one. Understanding the role of the board, which to me is probably one of the most challenging because people are elected to the board, but if they don't spend time either reading a book or having a book study, then when you go to the board meeting, that's not going to teach you about how to be a good board member. And I think that's very, very important. And I think many people that come on the board are not really having understanding. They know that they want to do something positive, but there's a lot of dynamics that come into being a board member. And people don't understand it, and there's frustration, and there's conflict. And most of that, I feel, comes from not really understanding your role.
Absolutely. Day 2 tomorrow, we're going to unpack something around governance and policy. But what I'm saying is it's an ongoing process, right? Like board policies, people don't, when's the last time we all read the board policy manual? I mean, it sits there, but most board members get into understanding how things are already moving and jump in. And so that's something that it needs to be constant institute evaluate. So let's take a look at the top themes by STAR code. So when you start looking at how you start rating, what were some of the themes that came up? Achievement and parent engagement, board time and adherence, district accreditation, work, moving as a team, and then board governance communication. When we unpack those a little bit, we get to see what were the thoughts that align to these. These are the top thoughts. So there are a lot of thoughts that align, but we only look at the top 3. So under achievement and parent engagement, there was accreditation and parent involvement, engaged parents and parent engagement. You all thought that that was super important. That's key because you're the board and you're elected by folks in your community and you represent, right, the thoughts and wishes and dreams of those and parents. So it's really good to see that parent engagement came up for elected board and for any school board.
And I think it's important to note the rationale for accreditation and parent involvement on this first one is so powerful. For students to be successful, parents need to be involved in the work. And if you all remember, when we talked about like grounding this, one of the things we said is keep it focused on students, right? Students at the center. And oftentimes in this work, it becomes more about adults and less about the kids. And so I don't know who wrote this, but the fact that you all started that is promising, right? Students at the center. And understanding that parents are an important piece in moving the needle for kids, I think is also important. So if I was gonna get like already before we just start, give a star to something that this board is doing right, that focus on parent engagement and student achievement, it's huge.
Absolutely. The second one, we talked about board time adherence. The ones that kind of rank at the top is, of course, focus on board business, on personal agendas, understanding the role of the board, and then parliamentary procedures. And you guys are going to get parliamentary, a review of parliamentary procedure. And tomorrow, and then understand the role of the board, we're going to talk about that tomorrow as well. And then the final one on district accreditation, again, moving the district forward, to think outside the box as you all move forward, and what are we doing academically to achieve accreditation? Those are the things. So these are things that are on people's minds, on their hearts, that they want to make sure that you are working in agreement. What I love about thought exchange is that it actually gets to show you that, you know, like an analogy of how the world works together. You might have a really great thought, right? But when you get consensus and build upon the thoughts of others, you get to look at what are the goals and what should we focus on. That's kind of like how a board works as a team. Everybody has an idea and a thought of how to get there. If you got 7 people moving in 7 different directions, you're not gonna go anywhere. You need 7 people moving in the same direction. Even if you gotta pull a couple along, Like, that's how you move. You don't move, I said, my thought is important and I'm an individual. When you get on the board, you are now, like, married to these people. You are one.
Right.
You speak as one voice.
Even if it's 8.
Even if it's that, the ghost is to speak. But one of the things we just want to unpack quickly as we move through is, you know, the themes that resonate with what you all want to accomplish. Remember, humanizing the board, team cohesion, consensus, board governance and policy, come together, respect each other, in and out. Did you see that reflected in the finance? It is, and I that's what it didn't actually, you know, capture what we want.
I did see it.
Or even more, I think I mean, we want to start now when we start talking about elephants. If there was something that didn't come out, whether it's in the accomplishments or in the thought exchange. This is an opportunity. Can you go back to the first question, the guided question for thought exchange real quick? As we plan for the year ahead, what opportunities or challenges need to be addressed? If there's something missing, either from what we put over there, feel free now before we move forward. I want to make sure you all get a chance to write that down when we put that either here or we put it in the parking lot. Are we free, or are we ready to move?
All right, well, there is one thing that I guess it would be more in parking lot.
Okay.
It's the COVID question. That's gonna be a challenge. Yeah,
Okay.
that's gonna be a challenge. I know it was a challenge last year.
Okay.
Some parents wanted kids back in school, some did. You know, follow this district, follow that district.
It's an issue because I've had parents ask me about it, how's the district gonna move on this, and you have a parent took his child to the doctor to get a doctor's excuse that they do not want their child in school because of health issues. So
Okay, we'll just keep going for me talking. Another thing is, my thoughts is, and I think it's the same as Mr. O'Neill, I really don't care what the other districts are doing, because I want us to be the leaders. I think we're smart enough to figure stuff out on our own. We don't need to look at the other districts to figure this stuff out. It kind of hurts me because people are like, well, Lee Summit is doing this, Blue Springs is doing this, Granby is doing this. Guess what? None of our kids live in Blue Springs or Granby. Our kids are just as good.
All right, the last one that we just want to make sure that we name, and that you go around and you share why you joined the board. We always think that your why is important. My why is what gets me through. When I have hard times and I want to quit, I go back and say, you know, why was this so important? And as we go through these next couple of days, hopefully it'll be lilies and peace in the valley. But if it's not, we want to make sure that we come back to the why. And it's important for you to understand other people's why, because it's not just you're not just a collection of board votes, right? It's like a person is here because they want to be here because their why is aligned to board service. So, Duran, you want to kick us off?
And also, this is in line with number 1, of humanizing the board. Number 5, respecting each other, and then number 6, getting to know each one of our board members.
I really joined the board because folks in the community was not looking to run for the board. I was not planning to run for the board. Community people and neighborhood people would actually consider running. And so I thought I could make a difference.
You guys.
I'm a school teacher and someone suggested that, that I should run for the board. I've been in Hickman Mills for like 18 years. And so this is my third term. So the first time I ran, I didn't win. And so I was like, okay, but I ran after that, I won. After that, I won. But I wanted to make a difference. I live in this community. My sister, her family, she raised her kids. My niece was a principal of Hickman Mills. I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to be about the community. So the reason why I ran the third time, I just wanted to do this one last term because I think we're getting close to becoming the district that we were many years ago. I think we're getting close. I think we have the people in place, and even our board, to make it work. I really believe that. And
We had a ball that we were gonna have you all pass around, but I can get out of hand if you can't catch.
So you're a Nerf ball.
I ran because education and children have been my life. I was an educator for 40 years. I know I don't look that old. But for real, education and children have been my passion. In fact, I ran, I have a passion for education. I'm retired, so I definitely have the time. And I have a vested interest. I live in the district. I have family that live in the district. I have grandkids that go to the district. And I have great nieces and nephews that go to the district. And so I think I can make a difference, not only for my kids, but all kids. I passed the season.
Out of necessity. I joined the board after working for the district in 2017. And seeing some of the gaps in its service equity. And then I also saw, I also researched the community itself and how it was annexed like in 1967, and how the belief was that the school district stays because it's the one governing body that actually is the bloodline for this community. And seeing the community and wanting to address that need, I joined for that.
Well, Bean, where'd you go?
Yeah,
Oh,
that's-
John Townsend, sorry, I'm sorry.
Oh, well, I really.
Oh,
Yeah, it's you.
okay, that's me. Let me see. This is my second go around with the board. I'm a letter carrier. And I see a lot of things on the screen. 12 years I carried around a truth. So I have like a soft spot or concern about the way our society is treating kids or parents are parenting kids and how districts are teaching kids. And I have to see firsthand, through my kids and through the kids that I've seen grow up through the years, different routes. And I was approached and said, hey, I would work. Contemplated, talked to my wife about having another non-paying job. I was was elected, and some issues came up, and I resigned. Those issues are, resolved, and seen an opportunity to come back and move things forward. Like I said, I see it. I have kids that's been in this district since the '92. I still have a daughter that's going to 8th grade. So my kids would say, "Hey, Dad, you really need to go back and get on the board. Dad, they don't get this, and they did." But kids, especially daughters, to get their dads to do what they need to do. And since coming back to the board, I sincerely to say that I made the right decision. I talked to Mr. Marine, seeing what are some of the things that he wants to do, and how they align with the things that I think that I always thought should be done, and how we came up with thought about out of the box. We've always been considered out of the box thinker, and I think Mr. Bean's an out of the box thinker, and I think that partnership will run well into turning this district into not just a good district, but an exceptional district. No, that's just.
You got my vote.
Oh, pass it to, can I pass it to Carla? Once she gets.
April?
You pass it to Carla.
April.
Honestly, if you want to know the truth, because it came with the position.
Yeah, so we're not going to Carlos. Okay.
I know, Carl.
Well, there's Carlos. She's coming
Carla,
up.
are you on?
Sure.
I am on. I'm on.
Asking you a question. Why did you join the board?
Okay, well, I didn't think I was going to get that question since I'm not
On the board.
a member of the board. But if the question is why I submitted a proposal to serve as counsel for the district, is that the question?
This is job.
This is John.
You can say what I said, Carla.
Money, no, I'm joking.
This is a beautiful marriage for me because truth be told, I probably should have gone into education.
Not too late. We're looking for teachers.
my nature is not adversarial, and so I think it's not. That's the frustrating part about law for me, is that I'm not adversarial by nature, but I do have a love for education, and I have a love for kids, and I have a particular love for kids that look like me. And so having the opportunity to represent this district and work in this area is just a wonderful marriage of interest for me. I mean, I do love the law, but I think this is just a great area for me because of that.
Oh, gosh, okay. Great question. And I guess I'll respond to this. This is my 13th year as superintendent. And I've been a superintendent in 2 different countries, in urban, suburban, rural communities, affluent communities, low socioeconomic communities, diverse communities, mono sort of racial communities, both perspectives. And one of the things I learned over those years is that I do my best work when I have that clear moral purpose for the students that I serve, right? And knowing that Hickman had a unique demographic that I felt I could spend my time and would motivate me and also contribute to the community and society was a very pulling effect in terms of that. The other reason why I think I'm here is that I've had some really good experiences over my career. And when I look at the needs of our district, I really feel I have some answers because I've done it, I've seen it, and I think I can contribute to help us get to where we go. So, you know, when you're looking for fortunately, I was in a situation where in my career where I can choose, right? And when you have a good relationship, both on the hiring side and something you want, then you're gonna do a good job. And so I felt that the profile of the district and the people and what they wanted matched with my own aspirations and needs, and to pull that forward to be successful beyond just a job. So that's why I'm here on the Friday. And while I've got the floor, I have something for your elephant in the room. Okay. One of the things that I would say that I think it's an elephant for us is that we need to really work on respecting each other's viewpoints, right? I've been on boards where people don't like each other and you can get the job done, right? So that caring piece is there. But I know the best boards I've been on, people really got each other. And not that everyone thought the same or even believed the same things, but they respected that, hey, this person's you're not getting paid for this. You're doing this on your volunteer and we're all trying to get to the same goal. So, okay, I'll try to understand you. And I think that's something that and I say we, I mean, that means me too. It's a continuous work in progress, right? Trying to put myself in other people's situations. And I think that's something that it's an elephant that we need to kind of work on, to kind of have that level of respect for everyone's viewpoints, right? Because, you know, sometimes you think something is silly or inappropriate or something, but they're trying to get to something. There's a reason why, right? And so if we can have that perspective, I think that would help.
Yeah, I like that. And we, I almost want to call it audible, but I'm not stick to the script. But we have a activity, we'll put it like a T-shape up on, and we ask people like, give us those characteristics of things that make you check out. So we have to think about a relationship with you, and think about like, what are the things that happen in our relationship that can be motivated and make you, stay engaged and committed. Some of it is, I'm married to this person, or this is my mom. But for the most part, you start talking about these elements, and then we have you think of a relationship in your life where it did persist, where you actually didn't stay together or you're no longer friends. We have people that talk about like what would happen when you check out of that, like lack of trust, don't have communication, always putting you down. And so we look that up, and it's important for you to want to recognize like what are those things that make a board member check out, and what are those things that you need to have board members to lean in. And then we talk about relationships, right? Relationships that you keep over your life when you think about friendships are not because you get along. It's not even because you always agree. It's because at the core, there's something there that makes you go through those hard parts to stay committed to the end. And so at some point, I think it would be good for this board to go through that and be honest, like, hey, Lauren knows this makes me check out. Like if you get to asking me, come on, you said, when he does that, I'll check out. I need time to process. But we learn that, and I learned that when I'm off in my center and focus, we check that. So over time, you guys gotta know that. And then we hit this thing. I know where you can check out because guess what? And is that if the learner is checked out and he needs to wait back in, or is it that I'm doing something that's completely wrong, that's not respectful? So I think that over time, that's important to do this here.
And one, I appreciate you've been the first to get something over here, and I'm sure we'll have others. But in keeping with that, I think if you all listen to even your why you joined the board or why you're here, you'll see there's some similarities in a number of these stories. I counted, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of you were asked by somebody in your community to join this board. And I don't know if you know like how powerful that is for people in the community to ask you to serve on the board where their children, grandchildren, nieces and nephews are. Several of you came to this because you were educators and saw the need. And I think nearly everybody said they came here because they wanted to have an impact. They wanted to make a change. And so I think like spending time in the things that sort of ground all of us and why we're here is really important. Gets back to this respect. I think sometimes we take for granted why the person across the table from us is at the table. And we start thinking they're not in it for the same reasons we are, or they're not invested for the same reasons we are. So I think that's an important exercise, and I know she said we won't have time to do that, but I think that's an important exercise. That relationship exercise is going to be really important for you all to get to a place where you begin to start treating each other like you're in relationship with one another, not just serving on the board with one another. And I think that's a critical distinction. Y'all are in a relationship. She said it earlier, y'all married together, but you're in a relationship for babies in your district. So we start with this, and I think this is really a really important quote. It's not beyond our power to create a world in which all children have access to good education. I think sometimes we think something like major or super has to happen. We have that Superman has to come down here in our district and like fix this thing for us. But I genuinely believe that the solutions to our problems in our communities are right here. We have it, right? What we need to take, who said it? You said you wanted to take this district to the next level. You have it. I believe that, or else I wouldn't be sitting here wasting time. And so I think it's important for not only us to believe, but I think it's important for you all to believe. It's not beyond our power. In fact, it's our obligation. People entrusted each and every one of you to do it, especially those that ask you to serve on this board and you answer the call. And I think if you, Byron, said your kids ask. And it don't get more pressure than that, right?
So, Byron, we're gonna violate one of your first rules, and I apologize right now. You said, I don't care about what somebody else is doing. We're gonna talk a little bit about it. Not specifically, what you're doing. Not specifically, but sometimes.
No, when I say that, I mean.
I know.
It's in context, yeah.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that I think is important, these teams are gonna come in tomorrow, and they're gonna talk about current reality and their hopes and where they wanna move forward. And sometimes when you are so focused, looking like in the weeds, it's like, what's happening? Why isn't administration doing this? What's the problem with us? But what I want to do is just kind of broaden the context and say, hey, let's look at what's happening around you, right? And you will see that some of the challenges that you all are experiencing in your district are not germane to your district. So the first thing that we always do is we say, okay, well, you know, when we thought about Black children, because to be quite honest, Black was formed to think about how do we significantly change the outcomes of Black children, because Black children were always getting the worst possible outcomes in the system. And so we wanted to say, is it just an urban thing? Like, is it just because of poverty, because of, family structure? Is it just that Black kids in the urban core, or do we see this across our school system? So it's important for us to kind of look at the state, at the county, at suburban school districts, at urban school districts, at large and at small. And so what we're gonna do super quickly is kind of go and look at that data, and you're gonna see that some trends kind of stay fixed no matter what district we're in. I know you guys know this, but when we give this presentation, we talk about data, we just kind of level set. So we're looking at 2019. The reason why we went back to 2019 is that was the last year that we before we were interrupted with COVID. No one took a test, I think, in 2020, but you all will take a test this spring, I believe. And so we're looking at the MAP scores. You all know that it has 4 performance levels. Below basic, which means the student is multiple grade levels behind. Basic means the student is a little behind, so maybe 1 grade level behind. And then proficient, and sometimes proficient, people think, oh, they're light years away, but proficient is just that grade level. It's like, hey, they are meeting the grade level expectations. Missouri calls that proficient. And then advanced students are ahead of their grade, right? So all performance data that's presented here came from NESI, right? And we're only gonna talk about the percentage of kids that are on grade level proficient. We are not gonna talk about the low basic and basic, just on grade level. And you guys know that the math test is given for you through third grade to eighth grade, and then there are end of year course exams for high school. And then we're gonna look at some graduation data. If you take issues with anything in here, we always say, you have to practice, that's what we do.
So this one has a lot on it. And the reason why this slide has a lot on it, don't think you have to get fixed on this slide, because we're gonna drill down. But the reason why we pull this is to show that regardless of whether we're looking at Missouri in the blue, Jackson County in the green, Blue Springs in yellow, Lee Summit in orange, KCPS in red, charter schools in purple, Hickman Mills in blue, Grandview in hunter green, and whatever color, gold, green, Independence is in right now. If you take away the percentages, because I think people's eyes immediately want to go there. What we want to
We can't see them anyways. We got all
Right,
that.
good, because that's important, because I don't want you to pay attention to percentages. What I want you to see is that no matter where we are, if you look at, take Missouri, for instance, white students in Missouri, here, forget the percentage, black students in Missouri, here. White students in Jackson County, here. Black students in Jackson County, here. White students in Blue Springs, here. Black students in Blue Springs, here. Right? And the same, what you're gonna see, regardless of the district, regardless of whether we're talking about an urban, suburban, rural, district, charter, white students and black students are the bookends. High achieving, low performing, and then our Latino and Hispanic students and low income fall somewhere in between. So while it's easy to focus and say, this is an urban issue, even in Blue Springs School District, Blue Springs School District in English language arts, 71% of white kids are on grade level. Not even half of the black kids in Blue Springs are on grade level. Not even half in one of our most affluent school districts, Lee Summit.
Low income Blue Spring kids.
Low income Blue Springs kids are outperforming the black kids in Blue Springs. Poor white kids are outperforming black kids in Blue Springs. So it's important people, get caught up in the numbers, but the issue is the same. People want to make it a district charter debate. That's not it either. White kids in charter sector, 75% proficient, black kids 30. They ain't winning for black kids either. In fact, that's the widest gap. That's the widest gap between black and white kids. So that we shouldn't be lining up talking about that either. The point here is that black kids aren't getting a quality education based off this metric anywhere. It's not, Blue Springs ain't knocking it out the park for black kids. Lee Summit ain't knocking it out the park for black kids. We go to math. You can see it a little bit better here. We got less on there, but the story's still the same. Doesn't matter where I send my brothers. Full disclosure, I was part of the wave that thought, when my kids, my oldest is in high school, that if I sent my kids out to a suburban school, they would do better. Until I started looking at the data, and I'm like, how? How is it that we can work so hard to send our kids out there and less than half of the kids that look like my daughters are gonna be on grade level in this system? We're not poor. Parents are college educated. But in that system, according to this, if it's 5 of them, if it's 10 of them in a room, less than 5 are gonna be on grade level.
Can I add something?
Yes.
Okay. I think also what we see, with charters is people often think like, oh, you just need charters is the answer. But even in math, if you look at charter, which is in purple, they are outperforming Blue Springs in English language arts. They're neck and neck with Blue Springs at 70%, right?
For white kids.
For white kids. But if you come over and you look at low income students in charter, 28%. If you look at Latino kids, 29%. Look at Black students, 30%. So someone was saying, well, hey, how could they overall, we talk about AYP, oh, they're making AYP. Oh, 70% of the kids are on grade level, or if you look up here at all students is at 34%. 34% of all students, so what does that tell us? That tells us the majority of the kids they serve is what? Black, brown, and low income. But the minority, the white children that are served in charters are outpacing. Look, white students, 70%, all students are 34%. That tells you that they have a small percentage of white kids, but there's something in that educational system, in all of these systems, that are advantaging white kids. It's not that white kids are smart. It's not that somehow magically white kids are, no. It is something about the system of schooling, of the teaching and learning, of the constellation of all that goes into that is advantaging white kids and disadvantaging Black kids, even when they are the minority. So we started Black to figure out, well, what is that? So that we can set the conditions for Black kids to be successful in our educational system. But just wanted to highlight, because everybody talks about charters, like they're the answer, but they're grappling with the same things and issues. So.
And this is just important. The reason why we're going high level today is because, again, when Dr. Bing's team comes in and they're drilling down on your data tomorrow, we want you thinking about what is it in your system, but understanding that this same issue is happening. So I like our first go-to, especially in communities, like urban communities, to say, maybe it's a poverty issue. Well, we just talked about this, right? Blue Springs got the same issue. Lee Summit got the same issue. So like, even though we use that, and that's our first go-to, I always want us thinking about what is it in our system, and they ain't got a poverty issue in Blue Springs. There ain't poor Black kids in Lee Summit. Not the majority. They got some, but even the low-income students out there are outperforming the Black kids. Low-income white kids are outperforming Black kids out there. So I want us thinking about what is it in our system, and not taking the easy off ramp sometimes, which is what we go to sometimes with poverty as an answer.
Yeah, and we don't drill in here, but we drill in
Yes,
those
yes,
neighbors,
yes, yes.
same thing.
I want to ask a question. Mr. Abid, based on those numbers, particularly both in English language arts and math, I know you came from Vermont.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see that same correlation with other minority students that you serve both in Vermont coming here?
Yeah, actually, it's pretty national, that trend. In
Okay.
terms of,
Well,
it doesn't matter.
I know like in Vermont, you probably didn't have
Yeah,
a
yeah.
large. Black
No, we had a
population.
majority white, but you still had the visible minority kids, the Black and Latino, were still in a cohort that were still in the gap. And that's national. You go to, it's over. I mean, that goes to a systemic bias around the American education system, right? In terms of how it doesn't matter what setting you put it in, it's reflected there. What I'd be interested in too is the numbers of kids. Like, if you go to Blue Springs, what's the number of those cohorts, in relation? Because, and even the charter school, there's always that thing around, they get to select kids, right? So are we saying that even when we select our best kids that leave us, that go to charter schools, they still don't get the type of education that can make them rise up to the top?
Yes, so we looked at the in count of the numbers, but then also when we started to really look at, we started looking at the composition of teachers, right? You have an overwhelmingly white, so white students are overrepresented in the teaching force, and you all know the data on like having a teacher that looks like you, especially like you have for Black kids, right? So they're at a deficit with representation. Then when we started looking at on the board, I mean, our our school districts are becoming more minority majority in some places, but still the school district overwhelmingly
Yeah.
are white,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And then you start looking at all these other things, so like, do you have the same percentage of kids with special needs? And do you have this? And that's when you start to see some divergence between schools that can become more selective within districts. So if I talk about KCPS, neighborhood schools versus, what do you call signature schools?
Yeah.
We start to see performance
Yeah.
standards. Same thing with charters. Charters that backfill and charters that don't backfill. Meaning like, they keep their enrollment open versus close their enrollment.
right.
And you gotta start at a certain grade to get in a second. So even in all that, right? You got some high performing charters, but what is carrying them is for some of the highest performing charters, they have a higher percentage of white kids than the Academy Lafayette, right? They have a higher percentage of affluent, middle class, black and white students than they do students with special needs, poor students, black students, Latino students.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, you know what? One of the things that one of the pieces we don't talk about when we do this is there's a connection between culture
Yes.
that we don't do when we do the analysis, right? That's what we talk about, culturally relevant, and even if you take apart, like when I've done some analysis in areas where we just take data and we say, okay, students of color are not achieving. Okay, break that down. Then you look at that and you say, oh, okay. So then it makes you think about the attitude and the cultural approach we have in education that disadvantages certain individuals and certain groups, right? That goes through, right? And so often people are talking about the kids, right? Because they'll say our kids are this, our kids are that, And for me, and I mean, I'll talk about it tomorrow, the issue, but we're online, right? The issue is really about the instruction. It's about how our teachers are instructing, because it's easy to blame the poor kids, the students of color, because everything, but it's about our instruction, and
that's something else I think that you brought up too. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to say, I've been trying to figure out why are our kids in our district not doing this? Is it the kids? I work at a signature school. I work at AC Prep. And we work very, very hard. And we talk about that, we do projects every month, and it's the active rigorous is challenging, but the results are fairly good. And I'm trying to figure out why can't we get to where we need to be, but I think it's how, the curriculum, here's the curriculum, everybody. Here's the kids, but who's teaching them, what are they teaching them? Are they just like, okay, whatever, if you learn it or not, see if you pay, it's that kind of attitude that, it's in teaching.
There's a saying that we don't, we can't track what we don't measure. And so while internally, I'm sure an admin is tracking teacher performance, community, who we are the owners of the district and hold people accountable, we don't know anything. I'll speak it for me as a researcher. We don't know much about teachers at all. We don't know, when you look at this elementary school, pick an elementary school, what is that? What's the elementary
Dobbs.
school? Dobbs. All right, here's the performance of Dobbs School in the aggregate. How many master level teachers? How many teachers are on PIP? How many teachers do we know that need additional instruction or PD? Or have we talked about culture? We don't know about teachers, but we know everything about kids. And that seems to me that before this research came out with the Rose Foundation, it was teachers are the single largest indicator of like closing the performance gap. Now they're saying teachers and also principals, because principals oftentimes big teachers set the culture, is the instructional, czar in that school. So those two together are the ones that in school factor. Not saying that parents don't matter, because they matter a ton, but in school factors. And so we want to know more about teaching that's happening at the school level so we can support, not to, say, oh, this is bad teaching, you need to get out. It's how do we help support you? Because teachers better this, because they have a why too, right?
Yeah. Can I?
So we had.
I think Cecil's,
Cecil, yeah. Oh, I was just gonna add to that point. You had mentioned earlier particularly about having teachers of color. And I think that is really important, when we were earlier on, we approved our teachers, and things like that. And I think that's something that's important for the district, that we making sure that we recruit and find teachers of color. I mean, I think that's vitally important. We raise salaries. I mean, I think that has to be a priority there in a majority district, that we have got to start recruiting, making that a priority in our recruitment model, that we're recruiting particularly male teachers of color if we can, and then also female teachers of color.
What I was going to speak to is the fact that we've been looking at some of how some of these districts has approached racial equity, even as far as us passing a racial equity policy, ensuring that we had training, courageous conversations to ensure, and I think that's beneficial as well, but also looking at just the traditional paradigm behind education itself. I mean, I think that one of the things that me and Director McGee, or Vice President McGee, attended, or real world learning, looking at the aspect of actually engaging our students and changing our policies to make sure that we are addressing it, although it wasn't said there, addressing that racial equity gap, because of the fact that the majority of Black kids in schools we know, based on teachers, have been kind of perceived in a lens of being older than they are, being pushed out of class, things of that nature. So all these precipitating events, when it all leads kind of back to our teachers and how our teachers conduct, and whether they're operating a traditional paradigm, which, for lack of a better term, is kind of based in whiteness, and well, not kind of is, and how do we transition and have that paradigm shift where we can close that gap?
So ACLU in Missouri, I'm not sure if you've connected with them, but they're doing.
I'm on that board.
Good. So they're doing research on discipline in the state. They've been doing this since I think like 2017.
I do a presentation.
And they reached out a couple of months ago around that work when another district was doing something around that. The other thing is you start looking at all the other things that lead up to academics. So like this is academic performance, right? But we know if kids aren't in school, then they're not learning, right? And then you overlay that with the fact that Black students in Jackson County were 7 times more likely to be suspended from school than white kids.
Absolutely.
7 times more likely to be suspended from school 10 or more days in the county, right? So like 10 or more days, that's 2 weeks. So we start to say, like, what is it? It's a number thing, but if a kid ain't in class for 2 weeks, one time they're behind. But if you get suspended twice for 10 days.
Yes, well, it doesn't make any sense in education. You're not doing your work, so go home first.
Go home
So
first,
that's
right?
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of things that we begin to look at in these systems and saying, how come like this is what's showing up for our kids? Right? And I say all the time, I don't think it's not a hardware issue. Like Black kids don't come into this world like inferior. It's not when they come, it's software. It's what we're putting in, it's what we're doing. It's not a hardware issue, it's a software issue. Been saying it since day one, and I wish we.
I think one of the main components that we really hardly ever look at is the communication component. I could be the best teacher, I can know everything in the world, but if I can't communicate it to that student, if I can't, I mean, if I could say it perfectly in the King's English or whatever, if they're not understanding what I'm putting out, they're not going to learn. So the question becomes is, are we going to try to make all of our students understand what I'm putting out, or am I going to try to adjust what I'm putting out for my students to understand it?
Man, I have so much to say, but I'm not going to. But one of the things, I'm glad you bring this out, but it goes so much deeper, right? In terms of how we approach this. And President Townsend just said something. One of the things that we know that students are successful when they have somebody in front of them that they demonstrate that they care about them and they have an attitude. And I think that data shows that the attitude towards students of color and Black students is a negative. So that expectations from the teachers are here. So then the students have expectations are here that are gone. So back in the 80s, this goes to your question, Mr. Townsend. There was this whole debate around Ebonics. You guys remember that, right?
Yeah.
Ebonics, and it came out of California. And I had a chance to talk to it was actually a psychologist who kind of put it forward. And they had people across the country saying, what's going on when you teach these kids to speak proper, da, da, da. But what the movement was really about was bilingualism, right? So there are groups like African Americans, Hawaiians, and there's another group in America that have this, they're English speakers, but at home they have a certain dialect. And so what the concept was, teach them to be bilingual. So the students would speak how they would speak at home. Okay, now if you need to speak standard English, how do you translate that? And so they learn when they're in their neighborhood how to communicate, but yet use a standard English to open gateways for other opportunities as well too. So it wasn't what Mr. Townsend said, wasn't this is proper and this is not improper. This is how this is what I learned from my parents in my home. This is and you value it. So they were trying to have an economic base that this is bilingualism, just like trying to teach kids another language. And I think, and if you could support that, it would. And I had a chance to see it in action. It was amazing to see these kids able to speak the way they speak at home, and then say, "Well, I would in standard English, I would do it like this," and they had those tools. And so we lose that when we have that expectations from our teachers or our instructors around what our kids can do. It lowers the bar and they never get over that. So I think even the conversation we're having about placing more teachers of color, I think that's even just surface. That's just the first layer, because the capacity and instructional level has to change. And that's what I know we're looking at in terms of how do we build the capacity so we can have educators that are bulletproof to deal with our kids and be able to have the capacity to work with them, right?
I speak into my heart. We always talk about systems, policies, protocols, procedures, and people. Because we say like, for this, blacks at the bookend, whites at the top, blacks at the bottom, for this to be sustained across districts, no matter how many teachers, superintendents, board members come and go, that tells us that systems by themselves don't run districts. People do. But if people come to fall in line, they fall in line with the systems that are there, right? And so what we talk about is we have a slide where we go back and we say, hey, from the very beginning, when we think about when schools were segregated, you know, there was this white school system and a black school system. When Brown came along and there was integration, there was closure of the black school system. The integration happened for kids, not teachers, kids. And they integrated into a system that wasn't designed for them since the beginning of school, 1876. This was a school starting with white kids. So it's policy, procedures, systems. All of that was designed to advantage them because that was their school system. Now, black kids are forced integration into that system, a system that did not want them. So when somebody is moving in that you do not want, right? Do you think you're creating systems, procedures, policies, protocols to help them have equity or alignment or advancement? No. Most of the time you think, how do we marginalize, separate, segregate? So when we think about every class of people that have had to fight for access into the system, black students, Latino students, students with disability or 1975 IDEA, now LGBT kids, all the groups, protected groups had to fight for access and then equity into the system are not what? Not getting as good outcomes as who the system was designed for. It wasn't designed out of that's just the way it was. But if we don't change those and think out the box and innovate, what systems, policies, procedures, protocols, and people are we bringing in that are gatekeeping this process, that are allowing some kids to continue to be advantaged and some to not be? And so when you understand that, that separates, say, this ain't about Miss Carol. You know, like, this ain't about you, this
Right.
is a system in which you're
That's right.
operating
That's
in,
right.
that I have to now change this system
Right.
so that we can get to our why, what we want. We want the same thing, but sometimes we say, oh, no, you ain't coming here protecting my system. Oh, I do this, I built this.
Right, right. And that's why I'm saying it's beyond just putting a person of color, because we can reinforce and operationalize those systemic practices, even if we're people of color.
Well,
Right.
we were trained in it. I had I led this initiative called Great Schools Business. Shorty Ron, familiar with it, Dr. Hill was, but I launched it in 2015 at Kaufman Foundation, and I took nearly 600 community members around the country, looking at schools that serve the same population of kids that we serve here in Kansas City. And I had a Black principal in Kansas City ask me, how does he unlearn all the things that he learned? This is a Black man saying, I know that I continue to support systems, right? That advantage
Right.
one group over the other. And he's like, we were in, I think Indianapolis at the time, visiting the school there. He said, how do I unlearn what I've learned? Because he said, if I don't do that, I'm going to continue. His school is predominantly Black. His teaching staff, he has a healthy Black teaching staff. But he's like, what I do is what I learned. It's what I was taught.
Yeah.
How do I unlearn this so I can disrupt this system? And I thought that was powerful. It was the first time, like, a principal was saying, I'm contributing, I'm supporting this system. How do I unlearn this? So I thought that was a powerful.
And this is important for you guys, because when we talk about the board, you guys create the vision and govern through policy that allow the superintendent and administration to tackle, dismantle, rebuild, whatever the means of how to get there. That, like, if any system is gonna be situated or repurposed or dismantled in a way, the board creates the vision, some constraints, but the process is say, hey, if OB said that this is a system that is causing a barrier to us getting to what we say we want, then we've got to not, like, I guess, ask for some documentation, but we hired somebody to do that. That's why the board stays at policies. We'll get to that piece. Those are the most important, because you set the context for how bold or how you're gonna show up and operate in the system and keep, doing the same things. If there's no conflict, we all like each other, we smile, but outcomes not changing for kids. So a board has to decide, are we willing to change the outcomes for kids and have critical conversations, hard conversations, and govern in policy? Or do we wanna, like, manage the status quo, create some constraints, and then, just continue to do so everybody likes us and we happy we get along? So, sorry.
Oh, I just want to throw this in. I mean, it's not even wrong, but I want to say this. There is a shortage. I went to a conference in Springfield a month ago. There is a shortage of teachers.
Mhm.
Yes. And another comment that we have is that when students, when people are coming out of college, they're not coming out with good teaching skills. Like you have your primary teachers and kindergarten teachers, they taught you phonics. Even in the first grade, you have a teacher that taught you how to write. I mean, you don't have that. It's like you test, you get your degree and then you test. So we're focused on what you have to test. You get your certification. So that old school, that old school teaching is saying, it's a different culture now. And you got a different kind of teacher, that's coming out of college. It's not all universities are really bringing out good teachers. I just want to, that's not wrong, but I think it is important. We're not educating good teachers like we did years ago.
So, any aspect of the information that's being provided, kind of the conversation, I went in and put some of the stuff, the elephant stuff posted. One of the things was because just as I think hitting to your point of board policy, in order for us to be able to kind of be able to create change that needs to happen on a policy level, we have to adhere to policies as they are, be able to meet us where we're at. So being able to review those policies, being able to look at those policies and put an equity lens on all of our policies so that we can shift and change those policies. I think that one of, like I said earlier, one of the good points in which the administration kind of brought to us was the aspect of changing the policy around graduation. And we had went back and we changed the policy around graduation to where we made sure we hit the standards of in which Desi is saying, but it allows us to be able to kind of venture into more of the real world learning where it actually adheres to what our students are doing. Now, and I actually have like a real case study to prove this. Like at the end of last school year, when kids actually were able to go back into school, Burke Academy, which was our behavioral alternative section, asked for me to come to sit into 2 classes that we're dealing with. We're kind of piloting the real world learning. In one class, it was looking at therapy and mental health. And the other class was looking at attacking social issues such as Black Lives Matter and things of that nature. Being able to sit and go through those classes and see like the kids' availability to be able to address not just the current issues that are happening that's perpetuated on them, but also being able to address the aspect of need. But it's the one thing that I made sure was prevalent was, in order for us to get where we're going, we have to know where we're at. In other words, we have to know, we have to be able to adhere to our policies and realize what our power is in order to change those, to be able to have equity, and be able to actually, I think we did a resolution last year for restorative practices for more community building in the aspect of in the schools to actually address some of the trauma. We have trauma squads. So actually addressing the social emotional aspects while addressing the discrepancies that I'm gonna keep naming it, that whiteness brings in for the traditional mindset that we have when it comes to education.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I think there's so much to unpack around war policies, right?
Right.
Because we naturally come to the board all the wise that you have, right? Wanting to have an impact, wanting to make a change, wanting to solve for it. And we take personal ownership of that, right? Even happened to me when I was on the board, right? I got my feelings for Lincoln and other schools, right? But then I want to like make a change. But I had to learn that even in that, this social emotional learning, it's superintendent, OB, what is the data around A, B, C, D, and E? And are we doing what we need to do? We want to go in and fix it and solve, but our solve is to hire a superintendent and provide clear direction and outcomes. Hey, in this next year, this is what we think is realistic. OB, do you think it's realistic across achievement, discipline, social emotional learning, restorative justice, teaching, whatever y'all want? I mean, you can't give them a list of 50, right? And then we say, okay, Jose, what do you think is realistic for us to evaluate you on these metrics, right? And then that becomes a superintendent evaluation because that's aligned to whatever we set our board goals, which is aligned to our vision, which is aligned to what community wants. We want to do that, right? Then we have to say, if OB comes to us, he says, hey, this is what I want to do because I believe it aligns to this strategic goal that I'm being evaluated for. We provide resources. We provide the tools we need. And we say, hey, we want to monitor this, right? We want to monitor this, but that is not, we come down and ask OB, get all OB staff. This is at the time we set the board calendar that OB knows that he's going to come back to us, but he gets to decide, do we change courses or stick? Because ultimately, your accountability is, he ought to come back to us in this year in enough way. And it's not that you're bad, it's that we want to solve, right? We got people who have been in the district, teachers, throughout, we come in with a level of expertise. And that's why the board of governance is so tough, because sticking to the policy is tough. And if there's a gap, we create a policy. If this policy is not working, it's yours. You revise it. If it don't fit, you trash it.
Right.
You own that.
Right.
Yes.
Like you are the leaders. You own the direction, which is the largest investment of your time. If you get caught on real estate, if you get caught on things that are in the weeds of administration, then who is leading the vision forward? And if you got a superintendent that's leading the vision, then if it's me, like this is not going to be. But if I'm leading the vision, then what are we working out for? say. You advocated the governance. So you're gonna have a hard time correcting me if I'm the superintendent, if I'm leading y'all. Ain't about to happen. So that's sometimes when you see friction, and instead of a superintendent saying, hey, no, this is not in my bailiwick, because we got clear board superintendent policies that says what I'm responsible for and what you're responsible for. And what it does is it gives the superintendent, I think, a life jacket. Because when you step over here, I don't have to play the politics of, and I get to say, hey, let me pull out this board policy. I just want to make sure we're clear, because if you're giving me a directive that's not in line with board policy, I need to make sure that my other 7 bosses, we don't put 8, but bosses agree to this, right? Like, that's why you all have to be on one accord. And that's every board is challenged with board policies, and you don't have staff, and you often don't have money to do it. So I don't want to keep going. I love this.
I like what you're saying. I like your systems thinking. So, and I think if we have some systemic system challenges, we need systemic solutions. And that's why an organization has to move in that direction. And so it does make it difficult for your one employee if you're not having a systemic push from the group and you're having divisions, or one person says we should do this and trying to clear their vision, another person is saying to do that, then we're never going to get to where we want to get to, right? So that's why I think some of the whys, water just dropped on me.
Oh, there.
Yeah, I've seen it a couple of times.
I thought somebody was spitting on me like, shit. The whys, you know, I think has a more significant impact than we realize on getting to the student achievement, right?
Yes,
Like getting our relationship and getting cohesion and saying, this is what we want to do. This is the what. All right, superintendent, now you got it. Now give us the how, right? This is how we're going to do it. And we can kind of go approach before. So that'll help us.
That should be a sign of relief. I think sometimes what we see with board members when they sort of get like out of bounds is when they get into the how, right? And like that's work you don't have to worry about doing. You hired somebody to do that, right? Like your job is to set the vision, but you're not a superintendent. Nor do you want to be. You said you don't need another free job, right? That's a real job. So like somebody who reports to you that you all pay to figure out the how. You just got to set the vision, right? And then hold that individual accountable. So to me, that's free, because I like board members work their butts off, but they out of bounds, right? They working their butt off in a job that they not getting paid for, trying to do the work of the superintendent and figure out the how. And I'm like, you're working too hard, and that ain't your job.
Because I've always tell Mr. Rocky, if I suggest something, I say, I'm way out of bounds. I say I'm way out of bounds because this is programming. But you know, and I've also told you that if I'm way out, if I'm out of bounds, let me know. My feelings aren't going to be hurt. I'm a big boy, yeah.
And you know what? You know what? One of the things that I think I told Mr. Townsend, I really appreciate that, like him acknowledging that, because I know as board members, it's a tough job. People don't usually come to you around the big systems things. They come to you for the small operational things, right? My kid didn't get this in class. Go and fix it. You know, this happened. Those little things. Then you have to come to me and I go, well, that's not really something you should be dealing with, right? So I do appreciate that Mr. Townsend kind of recognizes and acknowledges that, and just shares it in that way. So that helps me to kind of.
And it's community education, right? So
right.
When board members on our forum, people come in and say, hey, I appreciate that, but you know what? We have a superintendent, and here's the office that you can go to. So we got to become. I know we are totally.
We out of bounds.
Out of bounds all the time.
Exactly.
But we don't have to go through, all we're gonna do is go back to deep dive and see how Blueprint compares to the state, how charters compare to the state, reach something. We can do all this. What I do want to name is the takeaways, because I think that that's important. People are always like, well, why why do you talk about race all the time? Or why do you have to create something called black? Like, why do you have to be about race? And it's because I said it is about race when you look at the data. It is about equity. Of all the schools today in the bottom 5%, so Desi, you know, every year would say the bottom 5% is like 100 schools, right? So they look at all their school districts in the bottom 5%. At least 90% are either low income, or 90% are Black in student population, or at least 90% are minority students. Like 90% of all the schools in the bottom 5% in the state, they are either 90% low income, 90% Black, or 90% minority, and that's Black and Latino.
Correct. All of the schools in the bottom 5%, not 90%, of all of the schools in the bottom 5% meet that criteria.
Or at least, yes.
Or either 90% Black, 90% low income, or 90% minority. So none of those are 90% white. No.
Yeah.
If we look at ELA, math, and science across the entire county, Black children have substantially lower odds of being on grade level than any other group of students. In ELA, for example, a white student is 2.5 times more likely to be on grade level than a Black student. And then 2019, we had 776 students who did not graduate on time. They look at on time and graduate in 4 years. If you graduate in 5 years, you're not like graduating on time. But of those students, 363 were Black, which is 47%. But only 30% of the students in high school in 2019 were Black. So we have more students that are not graduating on time, a higher percentage of not graduating on time that are Black than we have Black students in high school.
Right.
So, you know, we say that every system is perfectly designed to get the results. It is designed to get these results, right? Remember we talked about these two systems, integration, and it is our job to influence the system to get more. It is our job to influence the system to get more equitable outcomes, right? The systems are not running by themselves. It's not for we have a line and this is how we do it. This is us.
Right.
Before we close, I do want to encourage you to introduce, and what I would love to add is we talked about one thing, actually, we can go back to the slide, the activity. If you tell us your name, we know if you're a board member, you're part of the executive leadership team, one thing that you hope to accomplish for our time together on the next couple of days. If you would tell us then, what's your why? Why did you join the board? Why are you These two, and then we want to name for you that elephant is like when you hear something that we're having a discussion that nobody's actually naming that thing that's creating roadblock. We ask people to put the sticky note, you can name it, or you put your elephant over there. And then at some point tomorrow, we'll decide we have time for an elephant, which elephant do you all really want to get to the goals. It's not just a pick an elephant. Right, right. Parading around, it's actually like, hey, we think this is reasonable for us to try.
But these don't go away, like these elephants are yours, right? So if we need this retreat on Sunday and we have guys with these elephants, they go to the parking lot, meaning these are things that we have to wrestle with as a board. So these don't go away.
Right. I noticed how you're using the plural now. When we started, it was elephant in the room. Now it's elephants. Now it's elephants.
We go, yeah, I'm about to say this. Start to feel like I'm in that.
Well, my name is Irene Kendrick. I'm a director on board. The reason I joined the board is I was passionate about children in our district. I'm a very early district, so I had to get involved.
What do you want to accomplish, hope to accomplish during this retreat?
Better understanding of the board roles and their abilities.
All right, and then one last thing. All right, one last thing. What's your song? And you got some good songs in there. What do you listen to? What keeps you motivated? What keeps you up? We had everything from gospel to old school.
Yes.
And I think we even had a commercial. Anyway.
A lovely day.
Oh, yeah, okay, definitely. No,
That's actually a little song.
no, that's an old song.
Yeah,
No,
it's a old
I thought somebody said something. That's Bill Withers, that wasn't it. No, that was Bill Withers, and Ain't No Stopping Us, a song.
Ain't no stopping us, yeah.
This is your day. This is your day.
This is your day. By who?
Talk music for
All
me.
right, and then everybody sang
Yeah.
it.
Oh, no.
There you go.
Is this it?
I don't think so.
Hold on.
Yeah, that's not it. I think you the wrong club.
Yeah. Can I comment on your takeaways? Thank you for putting that in. You know, we've had some extensive conversations with our systems leaders. So actually I've consciously changed our name to systems leaders. We're talking about dismantling systems, right? So that's what they're leading. And one of the things around the data that you showed there doesn't surprise me, right? And it shouldn't surprise our staff as well. So one of the things I've said is, okay, we know all this, so what? What are you gonna do about it? You know, okay, we can't get stuck in wallowing and saying, oh, we're down, we're here. What are you gonna do about it? Let's move to action. How do we address that? You know, ever since 1950, the Board of Education, it's changed, right? So thank you for sharing that. And I'll share with our staff as well too, so they can.
Okay, we gotta start wrapping this up, because restaurant closes at 9.
Yes, you can keep them moving.
Future agenda items, very future agenda items. We have a lot of first read talk on policies. These policies were sent over from MSBA for us to consider adopting. Plan on sending those to the policy committee. We'll be setting a meeting. We'll have the first reading in the policy committee. We'll have discussion in the policy committee. Then, once the policy committee gets started, we'll send it back to the agenda, back to the regular meeting for the second reading and vote.
President, those policies are on instruction, correct?
They were on activities.
Okay.
They were on like
Virtual instruction.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure that the board, while you're doing that, because the process that we want to use is that when our attorney gets changes from MSB, and identifies what they are, that it comes to our ELT group to identify, and then we can look at how we can operationalize the policy. And then it comes to President Townsend, the board as it has now, and then it can be sent to the committee for review. It does a couple of things. One, we have an obligation to give enough time for community to give input, so they can come to your committee and make comments or say they saw it, whatever. And it also gives us an opportunity to vet and prepare for how we can operationalize that actual policy before you make any changes. So I know I've spoken with Attorney Johnson about that, and that would eliminate those questions around if it's instruction or program. We would have already seen it and be able to do that.
Thank you. Thank you for context on that. Sorry, I didn't mean to
No,
interrupt.
that's all right. We have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, Mr. President.
Second.
All right, we go. 1 and 2. Is there any discussion? Oh, no discussion. So moved by consensus.
Okay. See you, Carla.
Later, Carla.
I mean, all right.
All right. Are you sending somebody tomorrow, or are you taking care of business tomorrow?
No, I'll be on tomorrow.
Okay.
It's good to see you, by the way.
Yeah. Thanks for sending that article.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm gonna start